In this film, we are going to be looking at different aspects of inspirational leadership and what that might mean in your organization. At the events we run, we look at all different types of leadership and how they work in your organizational context. As a philosophy though, we also need to think about leadership at all levels. In many of our events at DJ Learning Limited, we look at all different aspects of leadership and what leadership means in your organization. We also spend some time looking at inspirational leadership and what that means in your organizational context, because there can be a clear difference between somebody who is a leader and somebody who is an inspirational leader. And we explore what that might mean. As a philosophy though, we believe that leadership, of course it can come from the higher levels of an organizational hierarchy, as it should, but leadership can be at every level. If you're responsible for a team, you can lead. If you're responsible for an aspect of what your peers do, you can lead. If your organization is what they call an inverted triangle, like they have in many of the Japanese car manufacturing plants, if you're on the production line, you lead big time. And so every aspect of inspirational leadership means being seen as a role model. So people look to you for the way that you conduct yourself in whatever way in the workplace environment, and possibly parts of outside the workplace environment as well. Usually, inspirational leaders have to have this high visibility so people connect with you in one way or another, so either face-to-face or via technology. Really good examples of that would be Sir Richard Branson in his global organization. He has this wonderful gift of connectivity with all parts of his organization that are right round the world. So there are other leaders that we might see as being inspiration. So for example, Bill Clinton, one of the ex-American presidents, wherever he went, he had this visibility, he had this aura, he had this connectivity with those around him. I personally have not had the privilege of seeing him speak, but I've been told by everybody that has, there's this era of expectation before he comes into the room, and there's this almost reverential hush when he arrives, and this audience or those around him connectivity with everything that he says, and that is inspirational leadership in a political context. And it is about, if you inspire people, people want to follow your example. And you demonstrate examples of best practice. So people want to learn from you. People want to be like you and copy parts of what you do. Perhaps copy is a bit strong, but to kind of aspire to be a lot of what you're like. In my experience, I've been very lucky to have worked with many inspirational leaders. I'm going to share with you an example of probably the most inspirational senior leader that I have ever come across. And this was when I was working out in the Far East for one of the big banks out there. And this particular organization at that time had country managers, regional country managers, and the big bosses right at the top. And where I was working out in the Far East, through the various chains of command, I was working on behalf of one of the regional global managers, so a big area of responsibility. Until that time, and still now in my own orbit, I always felt that I had reasonably high levels of energy, and I always like to try to inspire people around me to the best that I can. This particular person, at the level he was, just took that to a completely different level. He had responsibility for thousands of people working for this particular bank. His week began on day 1 and ended at the end of day 7. He set himself a personal challenge to get 2 more hours out of every day. And the way that he did that was to plan his travel time from one country to another to play the time zone. So wherever he went, he bounced the hours to make each day long or longer. So that was the first thing. I thought, that's a good idea. I'll try and take that if ever I was traveling like that. That's quite a good idea, and it's a very good idea. Secondly, whenever he was in the workplace, and this was partly to do with the culture that's out there in the Far East, it is quite hierarchical, very powerfully hierarchical. There's a lot of respect to your seniors. What that meant is, in the workplace that I was working in out there, everybody, and I mean everybody at all levels, got in there before this senior person came. He arrived at 7 o'clock in the morning. Workplace culture also was that nobody, and I mean nobody, went home until after this senior person went home. Guess what? He went home 9:30, 10 o'clock. Everybody was happy to do that. It was just the way things were, that workplace culture. Incredibly positive, incredibly welcoming, incredibly high performing, but also it was almost regimentally organised as well, because clearly at this level of responsibility, not only inspiring in a work sense, but meetings were planned to precision. People knew what they needed to do, had full respect for what their leader was trying to achieve. But there was also a social side as well, because this particular bank, like many of the big organisations in the public-private sector right around the world, have charity partnerships. And this particular individual was heading up this charity partnership, and the way in which they were going to raise money was to do a triathlon. And he wanted everybody, every member of his team, thousands, to be involved. And this was the power of his inspirational leadership, another example, because everybody had signed up to take part in this triathlon in some way or another. That didn't mean to do all 3 events. So somebody might do the cycle, somebody might do the run, somebody might do the swim, somebody might organise the coffee, somebody might organise the sponsorship. So everybody was involved. And what was even better in terms of sharing that around this region for which this person had responsibility, technology meant you could actually beam different parts of what was going on in different parts of the region and share. So in Hong Kong, this was going on. In Singapore, that was going on. In China, that was going on. And you could see it all on the screen. It was just incredibly powerful. All for that common goal of people in his team coming together because of him. He inspired people to do that. There is no question about that at all. And I was lucky enough to be out there to see all of this happen. In between times, by the way, as well as leading all these incredibly successful teams to ever increasingly better levels of performance, this person who I'm thinking about now was married. He had 6 children and did the Hawaiian Ironman triathlon every year. So the only thing that you can say when you look at inspirational leadership is to say, in my world anyway, wow. But can we all be like that? Possibly not. But can we all inspire in our own ways, at our own levels, every day we go to the workplace? Yes, of course we can. There is absolutely no reason why we shouldn't aspire to our own levels of inspirational leadership. So if you come to one of our events, and of course we really hope that you do, we'll be exploring ways in which you, each one of you, can look to inspire those around you, can look to lead at whatever level you are and inspire those people that you work with. Please take the time to have a look at our website, www.djlearning.co.uk. Thank you very much.